Hello and welcome to the Tabletop, and today I will talk about the factions and nations for Black Powder. And I had this idea this morning because before I got into Black Powder or the Napoleonics at 28mm scale, I knew very little about the Napoleonic Wars and all of the factions. I mean, I knew what I knew from history, but it is super interesting. And I think that is what drew me into this tabletop and what finally, I think, made me decide to go into the hobby. And I will show you around. I will show you, let's say, the major factions, like we know them maybe from Bold Action or something like that, or from Warhammer 40k. And I will show you some of the major factions, some of their strengths. I will show you some of the minor factions. I will show you what I like about certain people, like there is General Blücher, for example, or the Duke of Brunswick. And of course, also I'm fascinated by Napoleon and his officers. And then I have to recommend definitely very highly Napoleonic Wargaming, for he introduced me very well into the hobby and gave me a great launching pad. In this video also, which Napoleonic Army suits which play style. He will say the French are the more aggressive ones, play a bit like orcs. Great Britain has great firepower, a bit more defensive. The Austrian Empire, they can take from a lot of ranges, so they are a bit more like the Space Marines, can play it defensive or aggressive. Then there's the Kingdom of Prussia, aggressive but in a different style than the French, and so on. And what else can I tell you? So first, I think what got me into the game was that it was a warlord game. So there's definitely a big trust there. Then that it was written by Rick Priestley, and then I think what sold it were like the minis and the whole diorama thing, and it just looked good. And what I also like is, I mean, you can buy a Warlord plastic, or on the Warlord games they also sell the peri-miniature plastic, and the peri-miniature plastics are very good, very affordable. You get a lot out of them. The Warlord plastic and metal are okay, I would say, or good or decent. And then it's also Victrix Highlanders. Where are they? Yeah, let's go here, where you get for where I am, like for $30 you get like 60 minis. I mean, that is pretty amazing. You can build 2 units out of these guys. So that is what got me in. It got me in that it was a Warlord game, that it was written by Rick Priestley, that the Perry brothers were involved. They have also written another rule set, which is Valor and Fortitude, and that one is for free. And then there's a couple of rule sets. So once you have the minis, you can play different rule sets. And I will play Black Powder just for convenience, or to get started in the hobby. And maybe I will try Valor and Fortitude, because it's just, I think, a couple of pages. But what also got me into the hobby was not just the look. It was also like the history behind all of this, like, and how it works, and what they were fighting for. And yeah, I have to say, I was also then intrigued by the story of Napoleon, and also of the times and of the alliances and everything that went on. Because in my head, before I go into the major nations and the minor nations, it was like, we have here a Wikipedia article. Where is it? Like there was like the French Revolution. So the French decided, okay, we don't want to serve the monarchy anymore. We want to be a republic. And I really truly love that. Like, it's power to the people, and it's now merit based, and it's not just coming from birth and from the nobleman. So they are fighting for their freedom, probably, in a sense. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it's for me in my head. Like they're really they are fighting against the royalists, and the royalists are a bunch of inbred people who claim to the power and enslave the common folks. And so I can sympathize with that. And the French, it is pretty cool because at the beginning they are like the underdog, and then they, I guess, fight for their lives because once they call out the French Republic, every nation that is led by a royal, like as you can see here, there's the War of the First Coalition, second, and it goes up and up and up. And in the First Coalition, I think it is France versus the Holy Roman Empire, Great Britain, French royalists. So from within and from without, they fight against the Dutch Republic, against Prussia, Sardinia, Spain, Naples, and probably in later wars there will also, like Russia will join in and Austria will join in. So they are in constant warfare. And after Napoleon defeats all of these guys, probably he turns into a dictator and starts to reinstate his own lackeys, and then the fight goes on and even further. So that's pretty amazing. And also, like the British and the German, they have a very cool alliance at Waterloo, because I think that probably Blücher and his troops could have gone just home or retreated, but I think they knew they want to beat Napoleon and banish him forever. So I don't know, great war stories that got me into this. Um, and yeah, and check out Napoleonic Wargaming's channel. And also, wait a second, where do I have it? It's like here. As you can see, here's also start collecting Dutch Belgians, start collecting, where is it? Like the playlists. Let's go into a playlist. And as you can see, he has a review for minis, and he has how to start Austrians, Russians, British, French, and it's really in depth and it's really good. Another thing I did before we start and go into the factions, I kind of looked around and went, okay, what happened then? What is the Battle of Austerlitz? Where's the arc? And the arc is pretty epic. It is like maybe a bit of a Scarface, I have to say. Like it's Napoleon, I think, coming from Corsica, then going to France, then becoming an artillery officer, then having his first battles, then some he wins, some he fails catastrophically, then something else happens, and then he has to defend France, and then he makes it, and he beats the major European players who, yeah, are the monarchy who kind of are against the common people. And so he defeats them all, and that's pretty epic. And then after he defeats them all, he becomes maybe a bit like Tony Montana, and then from there it goes downhill. And all of the major nations that he then has beaten, they start to learn his tactics, and they struggle also for survival and for power, and it's really interesting. And also like things like Bavaria, they are first on the side of France, then they turn against him, and it's amazing. Just really great. So let me see what I want to say. So I showed you the minis. There's also another channel. It's Time of the Eagles, also pretty cool. There are many cool channels dedicated to this. I didn't know it was so big. Then there are uniforms, things. Yeah, it's all over the place, and I have to say, I really love it. So let's go into the factions. I don't want to go too deep on this because I haven't played the game yet. So I can I have played it, but just a demo game. But yeah, you have the let's start with the French, because I think the French army, they will fight on every corner of the world or the European world. So this is more or less like your Germans in bold action. So they are on every can fight on every front. They can fight in Spain. They can fight in Russia. They can fight early war, late war. They have a great deal of units. I think they have also a really good army, a really good units they can bring. Napoleonic Wargaming, everything I know, I will refer from him. And he said, like the French, they can play very aggressively. They can form columns of attack. They have good cavalry, and so forth. So they can go toe to toe with everything the enemy has, and is definitely a good army. I would love to show you something. Let's see. So we have the Waterloo guys. They have great coats. I don't know if I can zoom in. Yeah, it's a bit limited, but yeah, check out for yourself. And then the French have beautiful colors. Then they have the voltigeurs, skirmish infantry, and again, I would go personally with Perry-minis. They are a bit cheaper. They are out of plastic, and maybe even look for Victrix or look for Wargame Atlantics. But of course, Wallet Games also is good. Just the horses, as you can see here. Here they look beautiful on the cover, and then here they look a bit goofy. A bit goofy looking. And I think if you take a look at the Perry minis, they don't look as goofy. They have much more beautiful poses, the Victrix one too. But yeah, if you can just pick what you want. So French army, beautiful. That's where I wanted to start, but then I started with the British because a friend had a large British army. He wasn't playing. I think he had something like this, like the Waterloo. He kind of had the 95th Rifles, which I'm building. They are out of metal. The metal is okay. I just have to say, because here, like, it's a straight line, the rifle, and on my mini, it's not a straight line. Then you get Hanoverians, you get troops, you get officers, and it's cool. So the British, according to Napoleonic Wargaming, they are a bit more a defensive army, maybe a bit more shooty. I think you get on the first time you shoot, you get one shot more, a bit more than the other armies. So yeah, I think they play a bit more defensive, a bit more shooty, but you have the best cavalry in the game, so they say. So you can soften up the enemy and then go in for a kill with your cavalry and yeah, just finish what you started. But of course, like in bolt action, I would say a rifle is a rifle, an infantryman is an infantryman, a tank is a tank. It is not like maybe in 40K where things are pretty different. You know, I mean, a horse is a horse. They just will have their own nuances, which I have to say I like very much. I don't have to my units to perform very different things. I just want them to act accordingly. And yeah, so um, the French, let me see, no, the British, we have the British, and so and the British you can have British units and you can mix them with Portuguese because in the Peninsular War, when they fought back the French in Portugal and Spain, they I think took 3 British line infantry, and then they took with them 1 Portuguese or 1 Spanish. So you could easily, I don't know, probably buy some of these and then paint them up differently and say one is a Portuguese. As you can see, you get here the flags. But there's also Portuguese and Spanish infantry. You can also play the Spanish and the Portuguese and so on. And because the king at that time I think was German or German born. the Hanoverians, they fight also for the British. So as you can see, a lot of cool alliances like in a Game of Thrones or maybe like that. And you can also play some Highlanders. So I would say what you like. Yeah, check what you like visually and maybe also from the play style. And also, yeah, just check out the minis. Then we have the next one, and the next one is, I would say, the Austrians. I would say the Austrians. The Austrian army, they, and again, go for the Periminis. The Austrian army, they are a multi-ethnicity thing. So they have Austrian-speaking people, they have Hungarians, they have German-speaking ones. I think Austria also controls some parts of Italy, and so um, they seem to they seem to play like Space Marines. You can play them aggressive, defensive. You can play them as a horde. If they are in large units, they have one stamina more, so one life point more for the units. And yeah, so maybe not so much here in the store, but the Austrians were definitely um, Austrians, Napoleon, and the Prussians. They will become a few years later the Germans. And the Prussians, I think, are very interesting because they started as um, I mean, it was called Prussia, but it was more or less indigenous people. And then I think the Holy Roman Emperor gave the German Teutonic Knights, like Prussia, and they converted it, which means they waged war against the indigenous people. And then they waged some more war and some more war. But at a certain point, Prussia is a big united landmass of German-speaking people, and it's more or less like Berlin, and yeah, they are united through the language, and the Prussians definitely have a certain aggression about them. I think the characteristic is like they are forged in war and they are um, a militaristic society. So yeah, it goes through all of their civil life and military and civility. I think is a big part of them. And as you can see, there are major kids. Um, there's a lot from warlords. There's a lot from Perry miniatures, and I think if I can, I will build also some Prussians. I think they're kind of cool. And also, I have to say, like, cool stories about them. I'm not rooting always for them, but then at Waterloo, I think they fight very bravely. Blücher loses directly against Napoleon, and then he comes to the aid of Wellington a day later. So the Prussians definitely can fight very aggressively. They seem to have good infantry. The cavalry is good, not one of the best, but good. And I would say maybe you can duel every other nation with them. Then what's next? Let's go to the Russians. We will come to the Portuguese and the Spanish. So the Russians, they are also a major player. Of course, Russia is huge, and they are led by the Tsar, I think, and also very proud people. Um, Napoleon invades Russia and wins the battle at Borodino, I think a few miles before Moscow, and takes Moscow. And back in the days, once you've taken the city or the main capital, you were somehow defeated. But the Prussians didn't didn't concede, and the Russians didn't either. I think the Prussians conceded a bit later when they realized that the Russians wouldn't come to their aid or couldn't come, and so they signed the peace treaty. But the Russians, they let Napoleon take Moscow, and they fought a scorched earth campaign. And it was a bit like in the Second World War, where, yeah, they kind of waited for the winter, and then once Napoleon realized he couldn't win the war or the Russians wouldn't surrender, they would rather die than surrender to him. Then he went on the retreat because the cold and it was cold. They had no food, and then the Russians pushed back. And I think then you will get the big battle at Leipzig, where all the major nations will come together to fight against Napoleon. And that battle he loses, and after that, I think he's on the retreat, and all the major nations push into France, and he then abdicates. He then will be sent to Elba, and then he comes back. Then the 100 Days campaign starts, where he reclaims power, and he wants to defeat the Prussian and the British army in Holland. And yeah, very very dramatic story. And yeah, the Russians, I think, have tough fighter. They are not the best shot, but they will fight very good, and they have one stamina more, which means they're very durable. So Napoleonic Wargaming says they are a bit more defensive, but yeah, I think really really cool if you are into Russians and if you like the green color and just the history. I would say the Russians are definitely a major faction, a big player. Yeah, let's see what do we else? Black power. So we have got the British, the French, we got the Spanish. The Spanish get invaded by the French early or mid in the war. Um, I think Napoleon thinks, okay, let's grab Spain too, and the British will support the Portuguese and the Spanish, and the Spanish will resort to guerrilla fighting, and they first, I think, ally with the French and then start to push back somehow. Yeah, and I think they look pretty cool. The Spanish, I think, more of a defensive army, but yeah, they look kind of cool. Um, Not so much what I want to play, but yeah, so definitely the Spanish are up there. Then you got the Portuguese, and here you got the Portuguese army. They are in blue. I think they look a bit like the British, but with blue and mustaches, and that's totally fine. I don't know what they do rule-wise. I haven't looked into it right now, but of course the Portuguese, they have definitely everything that else what the others have, and they're probably cool. And what else? Then there's also the British, the French, the Austrian, Russians, Portuguese, and come on, I've seen the where are the Belgium? There's also the Belgium and the Netherlands. I think they will fight definitely at Waterloo with the British and the Germans. And yeah, they have also, like the Belgians, also they have blue and the gray pants. So it looks for me a bit samey, but maybe if somebody looks at the at the Second World War, everything seems to look the same, but a distinct eye can tell, oh, that's a Panzer IV, that's a Panzer III, that's the camo from a Russian army, that is from an Hungarian army. And maybe after a certain while, you will start to see patterns also here. There are also other nations, I might call them minor nations, and there's also Italy. Italy, black powder,